Welcome to the Biz and Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Dowling. When I'm not hosting a podcast, I'm the CEO of Aegis Business Technologies, headquartered here in Tallahassee, Florida, serving Panama City, Gainesville, and all of Florida for that matter. If you have any cybersecurity concerns, give me a ring. And don't fall for the love scams that are so predominantly all over the internet. If someone sends you a text and says, "Hey, it's Bob. How are you?" Don't talk to them. Don't send them pictures. Don't buy crypto. Don't do it. Don't click. Stay safe. Call me with questions. Today, we welcome my friend, the amazing Gary Yordon. Gary wears many hats, but we're going to go with writer today. Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, writer means a lot.
Awesome.
And now I get to tell my brother Bob I don't have to talk to him.
Hey, not clicking and ignoring can save you a cyber headache.
Yeah, I know.
So, Gary, I'm going to paint a visual picture of young me. I'm about 29 years old, and I'm going to the Chamber annual conference, the Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce annual conference. Don't remember where it was that year, maybe Jacksonville, but I had just moved to Tallahassee. And you remember, your first of everything in life, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember, the Ron Saxes and the Rick Moores and the Karen Moores and the Sue Dicks and the Gary Yordons, these pillars of the Tallahassee community that I was like, and I'm just out there handing out business cards. Hey, you need IT help? You need IT help? Luckily, 20 years later, I don't do it that way. But how'd you get involved with that? Because you were the MC, I believe, was the title. What was that all about?
19 years. It was a dreadful chamber retreat years ago, and John Lewis was the chairman. What they always did was they just had whoever was the chairman. John Lewis was Super Lube, now whatever, Take 5 or whatever that company was.
I was friends with his daughter, Anne Marie.
Yeah.
Great
And
people.
so, lovely guy. And so whoever the chairman was kind of was up there. And it was dreadful. I mean, he knows how to run a company, doesn't know how to run a podium. And so I leaned over to Sue and I said, there's really an opportunity there for you to maybe make this a little more interesting. You ought to have somebody up there who can, at least kind of lighten up the mood a little bit and make people glad they came out of town. And next year she said, "You want to do it?" And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." But I mean,
One and done.
And that was it. And then, 19 years later, it was pretty irreverent. We did a whole lot of embarrassingly stupid things. But it became, when people filled out the survey of what they liked and what they didn't like, it was far and away the most popular thing at the retreat. So it just became a thing,
Well, you, for many reasons, you're a Tallahassee icon, but I'll never forget that first impression. And as I got to know you over the years, very cool stuff. You had a lot of great, cheeky, witty humor during those gigs. Anytime you felt like you maybe took the humor a little too far?
I always remembered that whoever was chairman that year, it was a reflection on them. So I tried to blur that line a little bit. There were some classics. There was the year Andrew Gillum had just gotten elected. First time he was elected. I guess that was 90-something. And I said to all the women in the audience that, he's now elected. So it's funny how you look back on these things now, but
Indeed.
Not
knowing where the story's going,
right.
But indeed.
I know. Well, when you overlay present day over an old story, it starts to sound a little different. But back then, he was, very vibrant, very handsome guy, and very approachable for women. And I handed out, beforehand, I had made like 30 keys, and I handed them out to all kinds of women in the audience and said, Andrew's gotten elected now. And so if anybody has like a key to his apartment, this would be the time to bring it forward because he can't, And one at a time, these women stood up from everywhere in our community, old, young, white, black, one at a time were walking up with keys and the room exploded. But the setup was I'd also given one to Sheriff Larry Campbell. And after all the women had finished, I said, is there anybody else who's got a key now? And I mean, it was a 5-minute laugh while all this was happening. And Larry stood up with a key and sheepishly walked all the way up to the stage and handed me the key. That was probably the longest laugh I had there, and slightly irreverent. You know, there were boundaries, but you never wanted to do something that embarrassed the chairman, whoever
Sure.
the chairman was at the chamber. So there were things I wanted to do that I thought of would be funny as hell, and I didn't pull the trigger on them. But I got pretty edgy. I mean, I had newspaper editor Tony Grippa, Mike Pate at the time, Tony Grippa, who was an elected conservative Republican, and Debbie Lightsey, an elected liberal Democrat, all in bed together on a Sunday morning.
It's a nice visual.
Yeah, I had, well, it started with Lightsey reading the paper, and then the camera pans over, and Grippa's newspaper comes down, and they look at each other, and big laugh from the audience, and then Grippa turns his head that way, and the other newspaper comes down. It's Mike Pate. They're all in bed in their. I mean, those commercials became something that everybody wanted to be in. So
Right.
I had elected officials going, "Can I be in one?" So they would do anything I wanted them to do. I had Larry Campbell in a muscle shirt and boxers in front of a mirror with his finger going in a bedroom going, "You looking at me? You looking at me? You looking at me?" And Debbie Lightsey comes out of the bathroom with a bathrobe on and said, "Knock it off, Larry. Nobody can see." I mean, it's like whatever I asked them to do, they just did. It was some classic stuff.
Well, you made a hell of an impact, and without you this past year, it's kind of like showing up to a party and one of your best friends isn't there. But hey, all good things must come to an end.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit. Where are you from originally? And when you 8-year-old boy, 10-year-old young man, what did you want out of the future?
I was born in Chicago, lived in Arizona for a while, and my father owned hotels. We had a lot of money. No tough neighborhood stories at all. And moved to Daytona because he bought a bunch of hotels in Florida. And pretty much grew up in Daytona. I mean, like the worst place on the planet to grow up. I mean, in terms of calling it a hometown. I mean, nobody lives there. Everybody just comes and goes. So
Vacation town, party town.
Yeah. Nobody lets you in
Race
traffic. Nobody opens the door. I mean, none of that.
Right.
Great, fun beach. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess sports. I knew sports would be a big part of whatever it was, but I didn't really have a vision. I was terrible in school. I mean, really bad. Graduated high school with a 1.5. And I just didn't have the patience to sit there. I was never good at any level of formal education, and I regret parts of that. But it was just, I was kind of a wild kid. We had a lot of money. I had a pony. I mean, that's like the worst rich kid joke on the planet, but I had a pony. Had like Nat King Cole at my birthday party. I mean, it was like.
You had Nat King Cole as your birthday?
Well, my dad built a theater in Arizona, and he was playing there, so they would come over to the house for dinner. Betsy Palmer, Gordon and Sheila McRae, William Holden, back then, all these stars where if they were playing at a play at my dad's theater, they would come to the house for dinner.
That's awesome.
So he just happened to be there over my birthday, so he showed up at my birthday party, yeah.
And hotels have changed. I mean, the Vegas hotels still have that dinner and a show vibe, of course, but that used to be the thing everywhere.
Yeah.
For the major cities.
But it was pretty normal for us. So I don't think I was very grounded, and I was really a poor student. I mean, I played sports. I had a bunch of scholarship offers, and then they found in baseball, but they found out my grades. And back then, if you didn't have a 2.0, you couldn't take the scholarships.
Wow. That's just all I can think of is my college roommate. He hates it when I tell this story, as he runs a construction company these days called Aegis. So Jay Smith was my roommate.
Oh, yeah?
He had a 0.5 our pledge semester at Florida, and I had a 1.0. And I was like, still to this day, I'm like, I've doubled his GPA. I'm proud of this.
Yeah.
This is good. But yeah, I struggled in school. He he rebounded a little quicker than I did. But
Well, it turns out that's just the way my brain worked.
Right.
I was very esoteric about how I thought, and it has served me well.
Awesome. All right, so jumping into a career. What was first?
I got a job I was going to play baseball at Florida State. I got invited to try out. It wasn't a scholarship, it was an invite.
Okay.
And I got a job at WFSU TV in the fall, and I knew I could talk. I wasn't sure I could hit. I fell in love with TV, and I hosted a show called Prime Time, and then Gripe Night, which led me to public office. It was a show where it was first live phone lines in America. When I hit the button, we were live, no 3-second delay. So all kinds of stuff happened. But my first, people would just call and bitch about something, and we would talk about it. And my first campaign slogan was, "He's been listening." And I was elected in 86.
That's
I was
nice.
elected again in 90 and then again in 94. So I spent 12 years doing that.
Into what positions for anyone in the
County
audience? that doesn't know
commissioner.
you?
Yeah. I was a county commissioner and chairman of the Tourist Development Council. And a pretty outrageous county commissioner. I mean, I think there's proactive commissioners and reactive commissioners. I think 99% of commissioners are reactive. They take the agenda they're given and they put their own philosophical spin on it. But proactive, you got to be willing to look really stupid. I tried to annex Wakulla County. I wanted to create Florida's first super county. It would have made Woodville an economic center, would have given us a deep water port. We had resources, no land. They had land, no resources. It was like a perfect marriage. And that line had been drawn by a couple of Spaniards 160 years ago. I mean, why did we have to honor it? It made sense. And I lost that vote 4-3. And I wanted to buy the phone company. At that time, it was Centel, and they had a 12-county trunk. And it would have, what we gained from the profit from the 12-county trunk, that was before cell phones, would have been larger than we were getting in all our property taxes. So, I mean, so you got to be willing to put a big idea on the table. So I was a very proactive commissioner. I was proud of that, but, you can look like an idiot real fast when you're putting ridiculous ideas out there.
Everybody's a critic.
But
Especially these days.
so I was the 12 years public office. I got out of public office and I sort of ran home to mama. I started The Usual Suspects, my television show. I just wanted to stay kind of politically relevant. That was 98. And it, 25 years later, it's still there.
So you pitched that to the TV studio, or they approached you?
Yeah. No, they approached me. It was Kevin Christopher on NBC at the time was the news anchor. And when I became available, he said, "Hey, here you used to be on TV. Let's talk about this." And we did it. And then he left, so it became my show. And then I moved it over to CBS about 5 years after CBS came and said, would you come over? Okay, yeah, they made it interesting. And so I did. And then I did the show. I started my company, a marketing firm. I mean, people think it's a production company because of all the video stuff, but it's not. It's a marketing firm. Great ideas, if you have them, need to be born from marketing, not from clever ideas. I mean, you have to decide, who's the market? What kind of conversation do you need to have with the market? What does that conversation need to look like? That's where creative is born. Too many times local PR firms, beyond local, but mostly it's local PR firms everywhere in the country, they come up with a clever idea and in a couple months they get fired because it didn't move the needle, because it was just a clever idea, but it wasn't born from what the business really needed. So I started my marketing firm and, had reasonable success. And then in 2013, Bernice and I came back from a trip, my wife Bernice. There was a snake in the bedroom. I'm kind of an adventure getting the snake out. A lot of stupid things happened. And I don't know, a couple months later, it was in my head. I couldn't get it out. I put it on paper, sent it to Bob Gabordi, who was the editor of the newspaper, and said, "I don't know what to do with this. do what you want with it. He called me laughing 5 minutes later, and he said, "You think you'd do this again?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And I had a column for the next, 15 years. So, you never know where life's going to take you.
Indeed, and you definitely inspired me that I figured if you could write a column, I could write a column.
Exactly.
And I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah.
Especially after reading your introduction to your book, which congratulations on that success. Yeah. And your show, I'll never forget back in that era when I first moved to Tallahassee. I was a guest on your show, and you told me at Don Yeager's Comedy Club the night before that there was 3 guests, and I just had to appear intelligent for 5 minutes. Can you do that? And we were over cocktails. I'm like, yeah, I could appear intelligent for 5 minutes. Yeah. And then that same evening, you're like, hey, everybody canceled. It's just me and you live, 30 minutes. Can you appear intelligent for 30 minutes? You might actually have to be intelligent. Are you intelligent? And I just remember thumbs up. And it was a great episode. I don't recall exactly what we talked about, but I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, I think the beauty of that show is nobody comes on defensively. And I mean, we've had great guests, terrible guests, but controversial guests, but because it's not a gotcha show, like so many shows you see today, I'm gonna nail somebody, I'm gonna pin them up against a wall. We get way more incredible things because when you come to a show that's a gotcha show, which is 99% of what you see today, you come in defensively. But when you come in open, because it's not going to be that kind of show, you reveal so much more. I remember we had Jeb Bush on when he was governor, and it was when he had to decide to take the feeding tube from Shivo. And a lot of your audience may not remember that, but she was in a vegetative state, had to let go, but there were laws that were preventing it, and only the governor could say, pull the tube. So she would naturally starve, and big issue, national issue, had national ramifications. And we had him on the Friday before he was going to make the decision on Sunday. And all the national media was trying to get him. He came on our show. And I remember our show is like a 3-minute segment. We break for commercials and a 7-minute segment. And at the beginning of the 7-minute segment, I said to him, when you're in your private moments, when you're alone, how have you reconciled the decision that we're all going to know about Sunday? The very next thing I said was, we'll be right back after this. Like for 7 minutes, he just unburdened himself from all the weight that he had with all the media and all the attention in this decision. But I think he came on the show because he knew it was a safe place to be able to do that. He wanted to express himself, but there was no forum where he was able to do it. So I think we had things like that. I mean, the show really provided an opportunity to get to know people at a deeper level, and it still does today. I mean, but as I go through my mind, great revealing guests, and then one, John Morgan was just, a jerk. He was. I had a black, I had a mood ring I was wearing in place of my wedding ring. Mm-hmm. It was an experiment I was doing for a column, and it's a pretty funny column. And right in the middle of it, Morgan, because he was just kind of a jerk, said, "Hey, is that a wedding ring?" I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "It's black. I haven't seen too many black wedding rings." He said, "That's kind of onerous." I said, "Actually, he wasn't happy with my response, which was, well, it's a mood ring, and it was sky blue until you sat down." And he didn't think that was funny. And but he was like a jerk the whole time. It's I really had hoped that would have been a more revealing interview, but it wasn't. He just
the man behind the guy is the same man you see on TV.
I mean, he's kind of the whole Morgan and Morgan thing is kind of weird. It's like
I know one of the sons. He's a good guy. I see him at Gator games. I don't know the rest.
Sure,
of the
they're
crew.
wonderful people. I'm just saying my experience with John Morgan was not a great one.
I got you, man. I got you. I think I know Mike. It's been a while. Go Gators, Mike. Anyway, so let's focus on writing. So you're a writer. I walked in your office last year, maybe it was last year, within the past couple of years, and about a month later, you texted me, "Where'd you go to college?" or something like that. I was like, "Huh, that's weird." And then,
was
of course,
great, yeah.
3 days later, is Blake Dowling a robot? AI, et cetera. I laughed my ass off when I saw that headline because it started coming in via text. What's all this? What's this article? Is Gary Yordon roasting you? Or is he kissing your ass? What is this? I was like, I don't know. It's pretty funny. So, creative process, we're talking about it. What led from our meeting talking about writing to the inspiration for that article? I got to know what goes on behind the scenes.
Well, I'm
'Cause the
fascinated.
screwdriver coming, I'll never forget. You're like, hey, can I have a screwdriver? 'Cause we weren't drinking at 10 in the morning, but it was funny, and I laughed for a long time.
Well, I think if you tackle complex problems with humor, people relax more in how they're read. I'm fascinated by AI because I don't know a damn thing about it. So there's a lot of fear-based. I think I wrote in that column that, my lawnmower's getting too smart. I think it's going to come inside. And so out of that discussion,
Remember the Stephen King movie, like Maximum Overdrive?
oh
the
yeah,
lawnmower,
right,
like,
the lawnmower. I know. Well, that's where
scene,
that
I'm
thought
like,
was triggered.
Really? Okay, same.
So my creative process is if right now we said, okay, we got to write, we got to do something. We got to think it up right here. I'm like the worst guy to have in the room. It's got to come to me. And usually I've got to free my space a little bit. So it'll be on a bike ride or a walk or some, little tequila, whatever it is. It'll be in space that allows little air to come in. And I was on a walk. And if I think it's funny, it usually writes funny. And I was thinking about some of the things we had talked about sitting there, and I was thinking about AI, and it just sort of a funny line came into my head that I wrote in the column, and then the next funny line came into my head, and then it snowballed, and before I know it, I'm covered in sweat and the walk's over. It's like I'm lost. I can walk miles and not know I walked miles because I wrote the whole column while I'm walking in here. And I knew when I was wrestling with the headline that I didn't give a damn if anybody liked it. I wanted you to wake up on Sunday morning and open up the paper and see that headline.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that was going to be funny, even if I wasn't. In fact, to me, the best joke is when you're not there. To me, the best joke is when you can create a laugh at a distance long after you started that process. And so I knew you'd wake up on Sunday morning and see, is Blake Dowling a robot? But it really, to me, that column was tapped into, I think, fear. A lot of people who don't have a comprehensive understanding of AI, it tapped into what we all kind of fear, and all it takes to generate some serious fear is lack of information. And I'm great at that.
What's a great conversation starter? Because AI is finally starting to creep into people's everyday dialogue and conversation. Well, what can I use this for my business?
Yeah.
To help, to hurt? What is this?
I'm writing one right now, an AI column.
Nice.
Yeah, it's about some research where they're going beyond trends. They're really getting into your philosophical core and sending you things based. I mean, this is going to sound like child's play to you, but for the rest of us, it's like.
I only appear to be intelligent, Gary.
Now
It won't be child's
well,
play.
it is true. In fact, I said this in the column. You are from University of Florida, where, I'm thrilled when you can use utensils, and so it's this. They're writing political ads, playing off your psyche, and so the column is about what I'm doing to throw them off the scent. I'm I'm Googling things and saying things that aren't anything about who I am.
Well, I loved what you said about your walk, because I stopped listening to podcasts when I go for a walk because I want to be focused on. I usually think about either work problems that need to be solved or column ideas. I will talk it through in my head, and I'm working on one now that's closing with an AI thought, at least, about a hospital in Key Largo, I believe, that's using AI to diagnose heart issues.
Oh, wow.
So you get you get a scan done, and it takes a few weeks for them to get the results back, but the AI will read it, and they'll send an alert if anything critical is identified, so they can get you back in as fast as possible. It's pretty cool.
The creative process is one where if if you don't put yourself in a space, well, I think there's a couple overarching things. If I get into a meeting and somebody says, "All right, let's think outside the box," that person's out of the meeting. I mean, I think what's inside the box is where things are genuine and authentic. Start there, and if it's not in there, then let's see what might be around the edges of the box. And if it's not there, then okay, let's get outside the box. But when you immediately try and get outside the box, what you've done is you've automatically excluded soul, anything that's genuine about a concept, and you've really gone into the edge of goofy. So to me, if you chase that, it's hard to find. But if you let it come to you, and sometimes that's sitting up at 3 a.m. going, holy shit, there it is. I mean, it's like there was a chick flick called Under the Tuscan Sun, and Diane Lane has a brutal divorce, goes to Italy. She goes to finds a villa in Italy.
Renovates. There we go.
Right. So she there's 5-6 months in Italy. She can't find a man. The older woman in the village has young men all around her, and she says, "How do you do it?" And the older woman said, "When I was a little girl, I used to run in a field trying to catch ladybugs, and I could never catch them. I get so tired, I'd lay down and fall asleep. And when I woke up, they were crawling all over me." I mean, that's the creative process. You can chase that all day long, but if you open yourself up, you learn how to process things. Now, there are things I do. I have a ridiculously large music library. If I can't think of an idea, I'll look at everything from, yodeling around a campfire to accordion. I mean, it's like I'll let myself go and I'll go listen to some music. Sometimes I have copyrighted video sites where I'll just go and I'll get ideas that way. And I'll store things. I just downloaded the other day a video I saw of a couple screaming on a roller coaster. I mean, they're like on the roller coaster and they're like, just like, and then it hits a thing. And they're like, and then, well, that's a political ad. I'm not sure how I'm going to use it, but it's a political ad. Like, is this your city commission? I mean, you don't even need to. And so I find things. I'm like a shark. I go through life taking a bite out of all kinds of little stuff. And if you do that, I think you develop your own creative process, which has served me, very well.
Awesome. So we've talked about your career as an elected official, a marketeer, a writer, broadcaster. What's your proudest career moment out there?
Probably longevity. I won my first Emmy in 2009. I won my last Emmy in 22. It's hard, and it's you can one-hit wonder and be just fine. But to maintain a level of consistency over a long period of time, to me, is kind of the hallmark of doing it well. If you're still relevant over a vast period of time, I think that probably means a lot. But from a career standpoint, I think the Emmy I won for writing is probably, to me, the most meaningful thing that I can remember, besides the impact of what you do. I mean, if it's just me, the coolest thing about what we do is the impact you have. I mean, the campaign that we designed years ago for picking up dog poop changed. It was the first time people started picking up dog shit. I mean, and we changed behavior by 37% at the beginning of that campaign, and now it's a way of life.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's rare you don't see someone with their little baggie. And when I was a little kid, you didn't see that.
we started that nationwide.
It's huge.
That was a campaign we did for EPA. Here in our community, it was TAP, but it played the same spot, had different endings. In Ohio, it was the Ohio Water Project. In San Diego, it was something. So the same template played all over the country, but that's when we made picking up poop fun. And so the impact of what you do is pretty funky. I mean, those are all career highlights, but in terms of my own selfishness, being called a writer, when I first started writing, I felt like I was around writers, because I would go to the National Association of, columnists, or whatever the association is called. And I felt like I was a Tupperware salesman at a vacuum cleaner salesman convention. Like, they all had dedicated their lives to they were writers. I was a guy who just wrote. And to me, that was a significant difference. I didn't think I was a writer or an author. I was somebody who just wrote some stuff. And, when I finally got recognized as a writer, that to me was like, okay. And I think it tapped into the school stuff. I think it tapped into, well, hell, maybe if I had done something, I might have been a better student. I think it tapped into some of that. Maybe that's the root of why that was such a cool thing for me. But for me, out of all the things I've done, being a writer, that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, when someone comes back to you and says, I didn't know that, you really made me think, that was such an awesome point, or that was dumb, or whatever the comment is. It's like, huh. I'm having a conversation.
You got him.
I'm talking to someone afar, as you said. And when Dave Hodges approached me in 2008-ish with the Tallahassee Democrat, says, well, how do you feel about writing a tech column?
Yeah.
And I felt like the box, I felt like I was in that box. He wants me to write a tech column. And after, I don't know how many years it was, but I'm like, I need to write about something else, or I'm going to have a nervous breakdown writing about cybersecurity all the time. And then Peter with Florida Politics approached me around the same time. I was like, is it all right if I would write about something besides technology? And it's like the whole world opened itself up with writing. I just wrote a column about vinyl, which I'm a new record player guy and really love it. But yeah, it's great. And when you can connect with people, it's wild.
If you don't expose yourself as a person, then what you write never connects in a way that'll be meaningful for you. I mean, watching your evolution, reading your evolution as a writer has been really cool to watch. Because for a while, we saw what you thought. Now we know who you are. And that bridge is something where wannabe writers end up falling off of before they get to the other side. But writers get to the other side. And when you get to know that person, and you allowed yourself to be vulnerable, and when you did that, we got to know Blake, and now everything you wrote sounded different. It's been fun to watch.
I appreciate that. Yeah. When Jay Revel suggested that I put a book out after the pandemic, and it was a compilation of columns, I was able to really look at my writing differently than I ever had before, and be able to self-grade, like, that's pretty stupid, or that's pretty good. I should do more. And some of the comments you gave me about, paragraph brevity, because I like to write like I talk, and I talk too much. So the paragraphs get too long, and it takes effort to shorten them. But I've been doing that a little more lately.
I didn't own that. That was Marianne Lindley, the former editor and county commissioner. Mm-hmm. That was her doing. She was the one who told me, write like you talk. And that changed everything in my writing. I mean,
the gear shift is covered with pride and leather, or whatever the comment was. But that's right. I used to try to do that too.
Yeah. And when she, I hear all the time from people who say they hear my voice in my writing, and I like that. I probably should have done my book on tape. I may still. I don't know.
That would be cool.
I've got another one coming out here, hopefully right around Christmas time. So we'll see.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So before we run out of time today, let's hammer through a couple more questions. Time travel. Where would you go if you go anywhere in the world?
I love that question because mostly people think about some regret or, something they did that they wish they had done differently. I think I would go back to 1986 and fall in love with Bernice all over again because that was a shitload of fun. The whole process of falling in love with her was just so cool. I think I'd want to do that again. So I think I'd go back right before I met her.
That's one of my favorite answers ever on this show. 5 years because most people, I want to go see the Grateful Dead. I want to go see the dinosaurs. I want to go back to my own life and relive that moment. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any question that you would have wished I asked today?
No, in fact, when you had sent me some of the questions that we might be talking about, that was a fun exercise for me, man. Favorite sports moment, worst sports moment. I started reliving some things, so it was great, man. I appreciated the invite because it gave me a chance to think about some things I hadn't thought about in a long time.
Well, let's stick with those lines. Favorite concert you've ever seen, and you can only pick one.
Springsteen in Tampa, like a million years ago.
What era? Like Born in the USA, the peak of commercial success?
Yeah. No, it was no. It was right on the edge of 70 and almost right before Born in the USA.
Okay.
And the coolest thing was when it was time for a break in the middle, he stayed on stage and the band took a break, and then we just got one-on-one Springsteen, which was pretty cool.
He's the man. When a friend of mine got their record player for the first time, their wife had coordinated some gift giving for all his best friends to get one record, and I gave him Born to Run. It's such a cool album.
Yeah.
And if you look back, if you hear the demo of Born in the USA, it was not that pop anthem. It was this gritty song,
you're right.
No keys.
Yeah.
Just like, born down in the dead man's town.
Yeah. He was.
Yeah.
There was gravel there, and I loved it. Yeah, I still love Springsteen.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, it has been awesome having you on the show today.
Thanks,
I feel like we could go a 2-hour episode. I figure Josh, our producer, went to Florida, so he's probably going to edit out that utensils comment. But besides that, I think that was one of my favorite shows. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, that presumes he has the ability to do that as a Florida graduate. So, I'm not worried about him finding that. Yeah.
Touche. Well said. Any closing thoughts? How do we reach out to you? You've got a book out there. How do people find it?
The new one will be Banana Peel Boulevard, based off the podcast that'll be coming out in the fall. The book is the one that's laying around out there right now, which is a pretty funny book. Is Driving the Road of Life with a Flat Tire, which is pretty much my life, man. So it's a fun read.
Available on Amazon.
Yep, available a lot of places, and I hear about people contact me about that book all the time, about one thing they read that triggered something for them. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Blake. A lot of fun.
Thanks for all
man.
you do in the community.
Yep.
Check out Gary's book, and thank you for listening to the Biz and Tech Podcast. We'll be back next month with William Smith from Capital City Bank. We'll talk banking. What could be more fun than that? See you around, Florida. Take care.